in this, we will talk about trainer introduction, means myself, and we'll talk about AZ-104 and 500 combo course, what we are delivering, and exam information about AZ-500 security. And I'll take three important topic as a information so that you get an idea how we can deal with the content. And first is what is zero trust, and then what is virtual network architecture in Azure, and then what is secure communication or how to connect securely the virtual machine through Bastion host. So myself, Vikas, and I have 21 years of experience into Microsoft and security domain. I In this 21 years, I done my first job in year 2004. Now it's 2025, almost 21 years. So I worked with Accenture, IBM, different companies worldwide. And from training perspective, I train worldwide audiences and doing Indian corporate trainings plus sometime and maximum times training for UK US customers. And And for this Infosec, I normally done so many weekend batches on AZ-104 and 500 as a combo course. So my specialization is on server security, hardening of the servers, Intune, cloud security, and M365 security altogether, combination of Microsoft. So, and I'm certified on all these skills, certified trainer from last 18 years. So that's my short introduction. Now, as you know, this will be my 10th or 12th batch for this AZ-104 and 500 combo course. And if you are familiar with Microsoft things, AZ-900 is your fundamental, AZ-104 is your administrator track, and AZ-500 is your security track. And my company, Infosec, is normally deal with security courses worldwide, CISSP, CCSP, and so on. And here in our audience, normally people comes for AZ-500 class most of the time. And we have seen if somebody is a 20 years of experience in security and they are little new into the Azure by chance, it's little difficult to jump into the security. So that's what we launched this 104 and 500 combination. And luckily, this is one of the successful track for us. And 10 to 12 batches I already run, where audiences are from 1 year to 25 years experience in the class. So why this 104 and 500 is important? So it's a very interesting certification and knowledge for the cloud journey, and it's a gateway to the certification. So after this course, you can go for 104 admin and 500 for a security track, both. And that's why we are going to starting with fundamental of Azure first, little bit, and then move towards your complete 104 track and then 500. Exam objective. So if you are going with AZ-104 exam, so there are 5 buckets. One is your identities, Entra ID, governance, storage, Azure compute resources management, networking, and then backup. All together, roughly 20%, and few bucket is normally 25%. So this buckets, based on the bucket, number of questions comes in the exam. And Microsoft given this high level 5 buckets for that. And If I go with the AZ-500, so there are four important buckets as per Microsoft. I've taken this picture from Microsoft website itself. So identity and access is 30%, complete secure networking 25%, secure compute storage database encryption 25%, and security operations is 25% roughly. So so each exam is $80 if you are in India. If you are in US, it's $165. And when I go to official and go to Infosec, and so if I go to this Infosec, so during this course, I will give this master folder access to you. This folders have everything what you need to learn for 104 and 500. In this, we have all the scenario diagrams, all keynotes, all keynotes day-wise, extra thing for trainers. So then we have labs, 104 and 500. Example, in 500, day 5, we have a lab for disk encryption. So all these folder access I will give you so that you can perform these labs by your own. And if I go to extra things for a trainer and open one PDF, so you see, we will start with starting from fundamental of 104, starting what is regions, what is subscription, and slowly we'll move to the deep dive tracks for Azure policy, RBAC, proper covering of 104, and then slowly we'll move towards your 500 tracks. So that's the flow, we are doing with both the things. So let's start with one important topic in security called zero trust. So last 20 years, when you are working with security tracks, Palo Alto admin or some other security things. So old days we follow a classic approach, and classic approach says any deployment behind the firewall is secure. So what does it mean is, so we use three-layer architecture diagram from network perspective. So example, so old days what we do internal network, firewall, DMZ, firewall, and external network. I for internal, DMZ, and external network. So anything you deployed behind the firewall, this is my firewall number one, and this is my firewall number two. This is very secure. That's the classic approach we follow, and that concept is gone in cloud. And in cloud, we follow a zero trust. So the meaning of zero trust in simple term is there's a no trust with anyone. When you try to access cloud services, how you access devices, how you access network, how you access data security. So any component you used to access cloud services, we need to enable security for each component because we don't want and we don't have any trust with anyone. Example, when you use network, we put a firewalls. If you use application, we use WAF, DDoS protection. If you access your data, we use labels, DLPs. So if you use the machine to access the cloud resources, so on the machine we do endpoint security. So in short, any component when you use, we never trust anyone, and every component we need to enable security posture, and that's why we call it as zero trust. So that's a big difference in old days, classic, anything behind the firewall is secure, but here nothing is secure. So for each component, you need to enable the security. So let me explain you with one small definition as per Microsoft. So zero trust in Azure is a security model and approach promoted by Microsoft that assume breach and explicitly verify every access request. Regardless you use devices, regardless you use machines, so you need to implement security for each, including identities. So identities we use Entra ID, MFA, conditional access, identity protection. Comes to the devices. Devices we use Microsoft Intune, Defender for Endpoint, and compliance policies. For accessing application, we use Defender for Cloud Apps, and for data, we use Azure Information Protection, Microsoft Purview, DLP policies. In terms of network security, we use Azure Firewall, NSGs, just-in-time, VPN services, Bastion host, and hardening for the servers, we use Azure Security Center, Azure policies, and keywords. As I said, for every stage, we need to implement a security posture. Now, in clouds, one of the very great or important components in Azure in terms of admin track and security track is your network. So if you need to deploy your IP addressing components in cloud, a component which give IP addresses to the machines, you need to deploy a component called Azure Virtual Networks. So Azure Virtual Network is a logical component of your network, and the same virtual network tomorrow will integrate with on-premises network for the VPN services we called as hybrids. So let me draw very crispy, clear diagram how VNET works. So as I said, to deploy something, the networking component, you need to deploy virtual network. So virtual network, you need to define address space 10.0.0/16. So you need to define a component called address space. Address space is nothing, it's a complete, like a DSCP range kind of, from which IP address is allocated to the servers, to the VMs. So if I put /16, then 65,000 IPs roughly allocated in this range. If you do /8, 16 millions, and if you do /24, 254 IPs, something. So depend which slash you have overall range. As a best practice, we need to define small subnets, subnet 1, subnet 2, and subnet 3. Subnet 1 is my Jumpbox subnet, subnet 2 my web subnet, subnet 3 is my SQL subnet, database subnet. So based on the application, you need to add multiple subnets. In this subnet, I am giving a IP range 10.0.0.0/24 based on this range. So first range is 00. What is the next range? So 10.0.1.0. Next will be 10.0.2.0. That's the way you define small chunks, subnets. And when you build a first VM, first three IPs are reserved in the subnet. The first valid IP for a virtual machine is IP number 4. Next VM, when you deploy, IP number 05, like that. You are in 1.0 subnet. The first VM IP is 1.4. And here is 2.4. So like that, you divide the subnets, and you can move the VM between the subnets. So example, I move this VM here. So 0.5 IP become, what is my new subnet? 1 dot subnet. 1.4 already allocated. So it got new IP 1.5. So, and by default, we have a communication between all the subnets. So all the subnets, they can talk with each other by default as an architecture. Another important, Azure is working based on the region specific. Region is a data center location. So if my VNet is in US, say East US, and I am deploying one VM in East US, I can select the VNet because both are in the same region. My VM is also same region, and this is we can integrate. In other words, my VM is in UK South. I'm trying to deploy. I cannot select this VNet because my VNet is in East US. You need UK South, then indirectly you need to create a VNet in UK South. It means, in short, where you deploy the VM network has to be in the same region because Azure works on region specific. So that's the architecture component of your virtual network. So you see, subscription, resource group, which network, which region you are deploying, and this way you need to create a multiple IP address subnets. Now, next is Bastion host. So what is Bastion host? Before that, some important technical explanation. When you build one VM in Azure, by default, without doing anything, I will show you. You got two IPs. One is a red IP and one is a green IP. By default, red IP we called as public IP, and green IP we called as private IP. And red IP means public IP. You're setting anywhere in the world. You can do the RDP connection to the public IP. So this is okay if you are doing learning, testing, or something. But in prod environment, we recommend there should not be any public IP on the production VM. So exposed to the internet as well as the bad guys, do some attack on the public IPs. That's why we normally recommend you should not have a public IP for a VM. Okay, if there's a no public IP of a VM, then logically only green IP, and green IP means only private IP. How we do the RDP stuff. So then we have a very secure concept how to connect Azure VM securely. So I divide this into two scenarios: cloud scenarios and hybrid scenarios. Hybrid means VPN services site to site, and one services we have express route. What is VPN services? In short, this is not our today's topic. This is my company Cisco router. This is my VNet. I deploy my router in Azure. This is my Azure VM. and I do a VPN services between Cisco router and Azure router. VPN services site to site. I'm sitting in my office. I can do the RTP through a private IP, VPN services or express route. That's later on we'll see. In clouds, we have two concepts: Jumpbox and Bastion host. Two concepts. What is Jumpbox? So Infosec diagrams, Jumpbox. So what I told you 5 minutes before, production VM should not have a red IP. So I make a dedicated subnet having a red IP, and it's not my prod VM. And all my prod VMs are in different subnets with a green IP. So you are admin, you cannot connect to the green machine directly. You need to land into the Azure network with public IP to the non-production machine, and from there do the RDP, RDP into RDP. Benefits: people cannot do attack on the production machines. So that's the one way. But the second way is you are deploy a Bastion host. What is Bastion host? You need to deploy a service in Azure Bastion. To deploy, you need a subnet, A caps, B caps, S caps. Case sensitive subnet, always they do /26. So you are admin, you log into the Azure portal, deploy the service, and these machines have only private IP. So when admin log into the Azure portal, start the TLS session, try to connect the VM, it actually redirect 3389/22 private port without using a public IP. So the HTTPS / BST So I log in portal.azure.com. Go to my virtual network, create a virtual network. I created a resource group, A01 trainer primary UK South. Go to create a name, VNET, and IP address range 10,000,016. I told you 65,000 approximate, and then /8 if I do 16 millions. So you decide how many slash you need. Default subnet is there. I'll delete this and I'll try to add three subnets here. Subnet 01, my jump box 10,000,024. Subnet 2, web subnet or broad subnet 10,010. And third subnet is my Azure Bastion subnet, A caps, B caps, S caps /26. By default, he picked up. He's very intelligent. Three subnets. So first I'm deploying my Bastion host, Bastion, Bastion. Resource group folder name. Service name. My name is Kumar. to my Bastion. I copy paste the name. Zone 1, Zone 2. Standard is okay right now. UK South. Integrate with my which network? The network which I already created. My VNET is there. Subnet 1, I am deploying a VM with a red IP. And subnet 2 VM, I am deploying a VM with a green IP. Green IP. So admin connect to the red one first, and from red one RDP into RDP. So virtual machine, create a virtual machine. Jump box, Windows 11, license agreement, username and password. So RDP allowed, standard SSD, and I'll make sure this is in my jump box subnet with RDP with public IP. That's my first VM. Means I'm not doing any change. So let's do the server VM. It's okay. So that's my first VM with public IP. So I'm deploying my second machine. This is my prod VM server 2022, no problem. And this time it's a prod VM. So public inbound port RDP none, one change, standard SSD, and I'll make sure this is in my prod web subnet and public IP also none. No public IP, no public IP RDP allowed, nothing. Full secure and create. So now you see two VMs are deploying, and in one login my 4 minutes already over. Bastion host is also deploying. So wait for this VM deployments, wait for this Bastion host. Once everything is done, I'll show you the use case of Jumpbox and the Bastion host as a result. One is already done. So if you see now my virtual machines, the first one is running, second one is creating. So you notice first one is having a public IP visible, but second one is having no public IP. So people cannot log in. Only we can log in through this public IP first and then RDP into the second one. So both the VMs done. Refresh. Both are running. So first log in into the jump box. Copy the public IP. Run mstsc RDP. So first is the jump box. Any guess what should be my IP for my second VM in my second subnet? So now this is my jump box. I go to my another RDP now, and this time I'm doing 10.0.1.4. You see, broad VM. So it's actually RDP into RDP. And now, so I'll put one text file, my broad VM example. My Bastion host is also completed. So I go to my VM. This is a broad VM which is having no public IP. I click on the VM, connect via Bastion host. And you know we don't have any public IP. So Bastion host will help us to redirect to the port with a private IP. And no public IP is used. And altogether there's no public IP already in this VM. So it's nothing. So just put the password. So HTTPS BS3 session will be kickstart. Yeah, so this will, once you deploy, it takes little time to kickstart. Let's try once again. Hmm. Can you see? And I created a desktop, one document. This is the same VM, broad VM.